Welcome, everyone, to the After Action Report, a podcast from the Eden Project. I'm just one of the hosts today out of a group of people in the room. My name is Michael Stewart, my friend and co-host and the executive director of the Eden Project. Sitting right across from me, Bryn Briggs. Bryn, say hi to everybody and tell them what the Eden Project's all about.
Well, hello, everybody. So just kind of a quick overview of the Eden Project and specifically the After Action Report that we're doing today. We focus on veterans and the military community. We try to provide tools. Really, our one-line tag is we try to provide tools for veterans to deal with reality. The focus is mainly on veterans, but it's not just vets. What we found is a lot of what we talk about applies to really just about everybody. This particular show, the After Action Report, we talk about some really heavy topics, but we try to keep it upbeat because we want these things to really become mainstream, these heavy topics. We want everyone to be able to just have a conversation and talk about them.
Right. It's not always doom and gloom when we talk about the stuff that are not necessarily the friendliest or happiest things that are going on in our lives, but you can deal with them in a positive way. And that's why I like to bring in my side of the humor there. So if you've never reached out to us before, or maybe this is your first time tuning in, you can visit us online at eden-project.com. That's eden-project.com. Or you can call or text 678-632-5383. We ask that you do that during regular hours because, Bren does like to sleep. Right. Every once in a while, he's in bed. So 678-632-5383.
So since last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and this month, it looks like we're post-traumatic stress month. Remember, I lead the D.
Yeah, we don't do the D.
Adam might have.
He might have a D.
The big D, little D. This month is post-traumatic stress month. For us, we saw about a 50% increase in calls this last month. And speaking of Adam, Adam's a great friend of mine. I've known him for, going on, I think 8 years now.
Yeah, about 8 years.
Yeah. So Adam is a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia. He's got 15 years of licensed experience building private practices, developing the next generation of counselors, and working with his clients. That developing the next generation is what I really like because there's a lot of counselors out there that do phenomenal work, but there's not a lot that are actually building the next generation of leaders and counselors. I love that part about him. When I first met Adam, we were at a Rotary Club meeting, and they introduced him as the sex, drugs, and rock and roll therapist.
And you expected him to come out with all this long blonde hair what's up?
It was pretty funny. Well, so not too far from there. So the sex part, is the addiction affairs, abuse, recovery, drugs, it's kind of what you would expect. It's the recovery aspect of that. And then the rock and roll, he works with high-end musicians, actors, high-performing professionals, and people whose home life is, crap. Mm-hmm. Oh, he also works with military law enforcement. That's how I met him. He's one of the few people that I know that actually understands the military community, and they can connect with him in ways that what I've seen, they really don't connect with other people in his profession. He owns and operates the Pursuit Counseling here in Fayetteville and leads his team in the community. That's a lot, isn't it?
I tell you, he does a lot. In fact, that's all the time we have today.
I know.
So we're talking about Adam Glendye. Adam, thank you for being here this morning with us.
It's great to be here.
So, I've said an awful lot. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let all those who are listening, hear from you, who you are.
Right. Yeah. And I love that sex, drugs, rock and roll piece. And actually, I think we were at that meeting when a friend of ours was introducing me to speak because I was doing military PTSD discussions at the Rotary Club. And I think you had just moved to the area, and somebody was like saying, "Hey, Bren, come over here and do this." And my friend was introducing me, and he just casually threw out there sex, drugs, rock and roll. And I said, "Actually, that really fits. I'm going to steal that."
Cool. So was that new, relatively new at that time?
That was the first time I heard it.
That is awesome.
a little bit about what I do. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. I'm a marriage and family therapist by degree. I'm licensed as a professional counselor, certified professional counselor, supervisor, and basically I'm a 0 or 10 kind of person. So I want the best of the best, or the people that are hurting the most. Mm-hmm. So the more complex the concern, that's where I thrive as a therapist.
Wow. So what Adam won't tell folks, or you probably don't even know Michael, he's a humble guy.
I can tell.
He won't talk about the things that he's done, or he does a ton of stuff for the community. He obviously is part of the Rotary. He's given thousands of dollars of pro bono work back to the veteran community. When we have people that need help, but really can't afford it because our guys don't have insurance. A lot of guys don't have insurance. So what do I do with them? I'm able to partner with Adam and his company and his team of leaders to help our guys out. But also, Adam won an award, almost 2 years ago now.
About 2 years.
He was he won the Game Changer Award through the Chamber of Commerce. It's one of those, there's a lot of competition here. There's a lot of really, really, really good people in this area. And Adam was selected as the game changer for this area. I remember the award. I remember the ceremony. Tell me a little bit about what the game changer meant or what it was.
Yeah, essentially they didn't want to say Young Professionals Award, but
Gotcha.
it was given as a means of saying like, oh, okay, we've got these great people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are business people of the year, but we do want to recognize the people that are coming in that are going to carry our area, our county forward for the next generation. So that's where that kind of next generation game changer came in.
Gotcha.
It's like the politically correct way to say what they used to. Everything changes over time. They just give it a new name.
Yeah. But if you know our community, there were a lot of impressive people in that category that year. So it was really, really cool to see you win that award. And that's why Adam's with us today, not only because of the topic we're going to get into, but and his big heart for serving the community, but he's just an all-around great guy and super cool person to have here on the show with us. So today we're going to talk about healing the healer, getting into the weeds of mental health and the folks who are helping people that need help.
Right, because we've touched on that on the last episode when we were talking about if you're no good, how can you be any good to anybody else?
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's start with, tell us a little bit of, like from your perspective, let's talk about mental health first, and then we'll get into the, how do we help the other folks?
So mental health, especially since COVID, just the access or the ability for people to talk about mental health has become more commonplace.
Good.
You hear people on social media, someone's posting on Facebook or Instagram, I'm depressed or I'm anxious, or maybe that's just the algorithm that I have, channeled into mine.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that the average person who before, wouldn't even say, I'm struggling, they would just go in internally and work harder. But since COVID, when all of our problems came within, our four walls, instead of having work or the gym or church softball and then kids activities, whatever's going on, we had about half a year or longer, depending on what state you're living in,
Right.
that all of our problems were within those four walls, and so we couldn't run from them anymore. And so that's probably one of the benefits of COVID, is that we're now having the ability to talk about what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and how those feelings and experiences are impacting our lives.
Gotcha. I've never heard someone explain that way, especially, going through the COVID experience and saying, here's a positive thing that came out of that. So I'm glad that you were able to.
Because there's not many positive things that came out of that. And I'm glad there's that one for sure.
What we saw on the military side and in the vet community, we saw an explosion of problems and things come out of that. So maybe putting those two things together, that more people had a lot more trauma and issues to deal with, but now they're also actually dealing with it. So that's awesome. You when you gave us some notes, you put something in here that I've never seen, but after reading it, I love it. Talk about this acronym that you sent us, RANT.
Yeah. So when people are talking about trauma, I do like it because there's humor in it, and one of the ways for us to deal with difficult things is to add humor in it. And so I love that we're already laughing, and as we're talking about difficult things and talking about what we do, it is important to take it serious, but not be too serious. And so the acronym RANT, it's a good acronym for post-traumatic stress, because those are the 4 types of symptoms. Are reenactment. You kind of see these a lot in flashbacks or nightmares. A, avoidance. Maybe you're afraid of going through a certain intersection or watching a certain type of movie because of just the setting that might be there. And in the military, if a movie is set in the Middle East, even if it's not about military action, that can be triggering for people that were combat deployed. So nervousness, someone can just be fidgeting or just high heart rate, just existing in their normal world. And then tense, it's white knuckling, not because you're trying to get through something, but just because your body is in that fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of people don't realize that freeze is a rapid cycling of fight and flight.
Really? I've not heard that. So I'm learning all kinds of cool stuff today.
See? It's a benefit to tune into the After Action Report, a podcast from the Eden Project.
Way to slide that in there. I love that. So, we have several peer group leaders. We've got a group going on right now. We have several peer group leaders that work with veterans, and almost all of our guys and gals are dealing with post-traumatic stress at some level. I'm going to share this with them. We also have 2 chaplains that deal with this kind of stuff. So does this transfer to them if you're listening day in and day out over and over and over to other people? Does that have a way of transferring to other people?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you don't have to be a licensed professional counselor or social worker to be curious about someone's life. And that's why I love partnering with the Eden Project, because you're not trained as counselors, you're not licensed as counselors, you're good people that are trying to help people that are in your cohort, people that are like you. And one of the things that we've talked about over the last 8 years is no one knows a veteran like another veteran. And since I was unable to serve, my work with military and law enforcement is my way of giving back to those that gave. And so I often recommend and refer my clients to the Eden Project and other organizations like yours, because I want someone to say, I've been there, I've experienced what you've experienced. And that's why I love partnering with you guys.
I love that. And I'm glad you said it that way, because what we tell folks in our peer groups, and we tell them, I think we've mentioned it here on the podcast a few times, what we do is therapeutic, but it's not therapy. When we'll get to a certain point and we recognize that somebody needs more than just peer-to-peer interaction, we're able to send them to you or other people like you. But what I've noticed, especially last night's group, some of our conversations in our group meetings are pretty heavy. And I know that I deal with this a lot, and I watch my chaplain. We tend to carry some of this stuff with us. What's that called?
Yeah, that's called secondary traumatization, or even just secondary traumatic stress.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit about that, because I think like you said, in the peer-to-peer community, I think that's more common than it's not common. And I don't know that everyone's fully aware, really, of what it is and just how to deal with it.
So as helpers, we not only listen, but we also take on what we hear. That's called empathy. And because we're validating someone's experience, we're asking them to share what their experience is, we can't help but take on some of that ourselves, which is why what you do is therapeutic, but it's not therapy because of the training that we've been through as counselors, learning how to have professional levels of empathy without going too far, but it also impacts us as well. And so that's something as I'm training the next generation of helpers, is we spend a lot of time talking about the self-care of the helper, because we do take on what we hear, because we do care.
Yeah. Is it common? Is secondary post-traumatic stress, is that a common thing?
It is. If you're hearing the same thing often enough, it is going to build up. I talk a lot about, like, if you have 0 to 10 and you're stacking 10 Lego bricks, and the more you hear of the same thing, but if you're stacking Legos up, if you're not doing self-care to unstack the Legos, you're going to reach 10 sooner rather than later if you're spending that much time doing it.
Gotcha.
So that's why we need to pull down and learn how to not necessarily compartmentalize, but work through what we are taking on through the work that we're doing.
Gotcha.
Right. Well, tell us some of the findings that you've found over your time and your research and all the things that you do. Some of the things that, are points of interest, would you say?
Right. Yeah. So, doing evidence-based work is a foundation of what we do as professional counselors. And so we have to have data, we have to have studies, and in preparation for us talking today, I pulled from a couple different papers and studies that were done. And what we found in the research is that that burnout, or this impact of secondary trauma, is that it's very similar in lay helpers as professional counselors. The level of people, it's close to 57%,
Wow.
which is a very broad but specific number of people that are experiencing this burnout.
So going through, I'm kind of a data nerd. When I saw your statistics and what was here, I loved reading that and digging into it. I noticed that it's specific. This was talking about clergy. Do you suppose we fall into that same category? I realize that these reports were really written on that one topic, but we kind of fall in there too, don't we?
Absolutely.
Okay. So knowing that it's going to happen, knowing that we're not trained for that kind of stuff, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, so some of that emotional exhaustion or burnout that people feel, it really breaks down to 3 components: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and personal accomplishment.
Wow. So I kind of get it, but give me a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so if we're stacking our Legos, as we just talked about, it's emotionally going to be exhausted. It's going to feel like you ran a marathon, and at the end of one of your peer groups, and especially the heavier ones, or if you stay after and you're talking with people, you're emotionally going to feel exhausted, which emotional exhaustion
Gotcha.
feels very similar to physical exhaustion.
Right.
Depersonalization, where you can create distance, either physically or emotionally, from those that are around you. And then personal accomplishment, where in this study, it's just like, oh, okay, like, well, I've seen 8 clients today, or we've served X amount of people, where instead of us focusing on the work that we're doing, we're just looking at metrics. And so that's part of that depersonalization, instead of the lives that we're caring for, where we can be focused more on the numbers as opposed to what we're actually doing.
So this can manifest in a lot of different ways. So if I'm working with my chaplains or our peer group leaders, and some things that I can talk to them about, like if they're feeling heavy or feeling abnormally angry and just hanging on to the anger, or just fundamentally different. Those are the kind of things that I can start helping them say, hey, if you're looking at this, feeling this, maybe let's have a different conversation, or I can send them to you, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's what we'd be looking for. And that's what the important step. But what this show is really about is like the next thing. What can we do about that? Once we recognize that either I'm there or our team is there, what's the next step? What do we do to help them?
Right. Yeah. So if we're talking about helping the helper,
then
one of my professors said something the first day of graduate school, and then she proceeded to say it every class until we graduated. The best helpers have someone helping them. The best therapist has his own therapist.
Wow.
And so if we're out there helping other people, we also need to be having a relationship with someone that's not our family, that is also helping us, because we're going to be getting those 3 areas that we talked about earlier. A lot of times we don't recognize the impact of our stress, our compassion fatigue before we're at Lego 8, 9, or 10. So having that third party to be able to say, hey, I think you're like stacking up to like number 6 or 7.
I like that analogy, that stacking up Legos, because Eli used to play with Legos all the time. Now I can see this visual now of the Legos, and when it gets to that number 10, or probably way before then, you want to say, okay, it's time to unstack those Legos.
Yeah, I think when we get to number 6,
okay, that's it. Okay.
The average person's capacity for stress lives between 4 and 6.
Gotcha.
Occasionally, we can get to 6, 7, 8, and be able to do that for a short amount of time. But we can't live our lives at 8, 9, or 10, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Especially if you have red Legos, because that makes you angry. Blue and white Legos.
Mix it into some white and stuff. So what are some specific things that we can do? For ourselves, finding help, obviously, is important. I remember reading something about Michael Jordan. He was okay at basketball, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He had I think you're the one who taught me this. He had 7 coaches. He had someone to coach him on dribbling and coach him on free shots and whatever else. So this is kind of like that, right?
Yeah, you almost sound like a basketball fan. Almost,
right? Almost getting there.
Yes, yeah. But basically, the best people get help. Let's go with politics. The president has a cabinet.
The Santa politics.
You could do that too. But
all of a sudden, your mic's not working.
Yes. You just cut me off, right? I didn't say which president.
Yeah, right.
I just said the president has a cabinet.
There you
go. The best businesses have a board of advisors to the CEO.
Yep.
And in sports, Michael Jordan, he had his head coach, Phil Jackson, throughout his career. He also had amazing teammates who knew their role, and then he also knew his role, and he didn't act outside of it. He had a financial advisor, a shooting coach, a strength coach, a nutrition coach. He had his mom that negotiated the Nike deal that got him started.
Wow.
That therefore changed the world of sports endorsements for every player going forward. He was the first person that actually had a percentage deal off of merchandise.
Wow. So how did that apply to us now? I mean, I know I brought that in, and I think it's a great comparison or analogy. Yeah. So applying that to mental health professionals or our peer group leaders, right. How would you say that it fits?
Yeah, so as helpers, we need our board of advisors. We need other peer group leaders to say, hey, how was that group for you? I noticed that this one person was triggering something for you because I know your story, and it's very similar to that person. So how are you going to care for yourself? Are you going to spend time if you're into faith? Are you praying more? Are you spending time in nature, going on a walk? It's kind of hot outside right now, so I recommend early rucks in the morning or late night,
or go to the gym,
right? Or going to the gym.
Yeah.
Are you going to take a sabbatical? Hey, this group, this 12-week peer group is ending. Let's take 2 weeks before we start the next one. So that way you can care for yourself. But I don't want you to just take time off. I want you to be purposeful about the time that you are taking off.
Yeah.
So what specifically are you going to do to care for yourself?
So lead the conversation. It's one thing to like you said, give them the break in between, but maybe plant the seed and say, have you thought about going to the gym or taking a walk or be mindful or purposeful about that break in between?
Yeah, well, I would even get more specific and say, hey, instead of are you thinking about it, it's what is your plan during the next 2 weeks for your self-care so that you can be ready for the start of the next group.
Listen, and this is why people like or some of us in the room should have a trainer to go to the gym. I want someone to walk around my life, and every time, like when Trump was president, every time he went to tweet something, someone slapped that phone right out of his hand. That's a good coach. You know what I mean? I want someone to slap that donut out of my hand before it goes in my mouth and tell me to get enough sleep. And hey, it's time to go over and hug your wife. You know, it's like, watch for these cues because we live in a lifestyle now that's totally different from, say, 100 years ago. You know, you remember, like, if it was 1924, you know, times weren't that great. However, we didn't have the internet and all the I don't think we were aware of everything that was happening in the world as much as we do right now. Yeah. And that can put a lot of pressure on a human, much less, I mean, think about the people who've been to war and dealing with PTS and things like that. I mean, I can see where I would love to have several coaches in my life following me around, telling me what to do. It would be great.
So you and I have got similar work environments. You work at a desk and a computer a lot. You sit a lot. I'm guessing.
Yes.
You sit and do a lot. And so do I. When I get on my computer and I start researching, hours will go by and I don't realize how much time has gone by.
You look down, you're like, oh man,
where to go?
7, you know.
What I've found is, and I've been doing this a lot more with this particular peer group, exercise completely changes my mindset, my mood. It gets so much going on. So we can add exercise to that self-care list.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And during the break, it's really important to think about what your boundaries are during the break. Right? Yeah. A lot of times people think about boundaries as a fence. And if you're building a fence, I'm going to throw it out to the group. What is the purpose of the fence?
Uh-oh. He's going to quiz us now.
So I can mow the lawn naked? No,
keep things either keep things out or keep things in.
Okay. What's your answer, Michael?
Uh-oh.
That was my answer.
Glad I jumped in there.
Well, I mean, if I'm building a fence, I don't want people to look in and see what's going on, or to keep a dog in. That there you go. That's the only two things I can come up with.
You have cats.
I have a cat, and he's indoors.
Gotcha.
So it's either the get off my lawn, no trespassing, or we don't want Fluffy to get out.
Yep.
Right. So once we build the fence, can we worry about what's happening on the other side?
Of course, you can.
You can. Should you?
I think or should you be asking? Should you be worrying about what's going on the outside?
Is it helpful to be worried about what's happening on the outside? Right.
I'm going to say no.
Right. It's not helpful. Right. The analogy I always use in sessions is next door you could have a nudist colony, and most of the time the nudist colonies are not the ones that you actually want to be looking in on, right? No public shaming there, sorry. But it's like if we are worried about the other side of the fence, think back to the TV show Home Improvement, where the neighbor looks over and hello neighbor,
right? And all you see the top of his head.
But the average person, once you build that fence, you're really not going to worry about the outside. You're going to worry about manicuring your lawn, making sure your barbecue station's there. If you happen to have a pool, making sure the chemicals are right and that the deck's pressure washed and ready at any moment for the kids to come home or your friends to come over, and you're firing up the grill to make your famous 3, 3, and 3 rib recipe on your big green egg. Right?
Sounds like you got something to share with us.
I feel like he knows he's speaking from experience.
Yes, I talk about this all the time because our boundaries are for us to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can share ourselves with other people. Notice how the examples
That's where you're going with that. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Notice how the examples were we're taking care of the pool so that our kids can enjoy it. Our friends can come over. We can share the recipe and the result of our recipe with others. So if we're having healthy boundaries, it's about inviting certain people into our lives that we're going to live fulfilled lives with.
So last night I used the example in the peer group that you can't pour from an empty cup. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you're taking care of inside the fence? You're keeping your cup full. Is that what I'm?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
And if you currently have a steady drip going into the cup, and you're not waiting, okay, 12 weeks we're doing this. All right, now I'm going to self-care.
I love that. Okay.
So what are you doing every day?
Yeah.
Whether it's Andrew Huberman talks about getting morning light and doing deep breathing exercises. But if you're doing something every day, whether it's 5 minutes or just with intention, you're going to be prepared for that day. And that's actually going to take one of those Legos off, because you're being purposeful about caring for yourself.
I love that. So that's what people can do for themselves, intentionally do for themselves. They build healthy boundaries and then keep themselves healthy on the inside and work on that cool stuff.
Yeah. And then Gordon MacDonald said, if you don't plan your day, someone else is going to plan it for you. So self-care, recharging, unstacking Legos is not magically going to happen. You have to do it with purpose, just like Michael Jordan would. He would have scheduled time to meet with his shooting coach. He would have scheduled time to work on strength. And so we have to have set aside time in our calendars for caring for ourselves.
Okay, so in case someone was getting their coffee refilled or stepped away or sitting at a red light, repeat that quote again, because that's a really powerful quote.
Yeah. If you don't plan your day, someone else is going to plan it for you.
Man, I love that. that.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. I liked him when he was in the Doobie Brothers too.
Who's he?
Gordon MacDonald. Oh, never mind. It's Michael MacDonald.
Oh my gosh.
Just kidding.
Cousin of old MacDonald.
We can cut that out if y'all want me to. I can edit.
That's pretty funny.
Not to mention that you could also plan your day, and then someone's going to try to screw it up anyway. You never know what life's in store for you. So it's better to go out, or kind of somewhat knowing what's going on, and have taking the reins.
Yeah, well, even when you're going throughout your day, you have that gym time scheduled. I'm the guy that habitually walks around only with one AirPod in my ear, because I want to be intentional, because if I see someone in the gym or walking around the neighborhood that just has that, that like get off my lawn look on their face, right?
Yeah.
Just giving a smile and being intentional about, like, we don't know what that person is going through, and just giving a smile or giving a high five to someone while you're at the gym, that could literally change someone's life.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. So, as we're talking about this and we're building the fence and we're working on ourselves, eventually we do need, or whether you're a professional or a lay person or a peer group leader, we do need to talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
Who's it okay for us to share our stuff with?
Well, if you don't have a professional counselor, then get someone.
Yeah.
Right. And I love what you're doing at the Eden Project by having peer groups. And I think that they're intentionally titled peer group.
Yep.
You're not coming at it as the role of the expert.
Right.
You're coming at it from a position of saying, I've been there. Mm-hmm. I know what you're going through. I know what helps me. And I also want to help you because I know what helps me. But it's not a substitute for professional counseling. And I'm not trying to do a sales pitch at all, but I have my peers that I meet with that help me from a business perspective, as well as, hey, how are you doing as a professional? But then I also have my therapist that helps me from a personal area where it's not a person I have a business relationship with. It is a person that's not attached to my world, that truly is that third-party casual observer who is trained to help me get out of my own way.
So it could be a couple people. I mean, it's probably not the healthiest for me to go home and dump on my wife.
I don't think she would love that.
Don't do this.
But I could call Michael and say, man, I'm having a rough day. And just kind of.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's why he never answers.
You can always call me. You can always.
Straight to voicemail.
Well, having friends, but there's things that you don't want to say to a friend.
Yeah.
Because, hey, if he found out about this about me and how horrible I am, you want to go and speak to a stranger. And then, Now a stranger knows something about you. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard for someone to make that decision either way. What would you say? How can you entice someone to say, hey, maybe you can put that thinking aside and just, because you're not, if you don't go get help, you'll never get help. You know what I mean?
Well,
I like that.
Yeah. Two thoughts on that. The saying goes, you're the average of the 5 people in your life.
Oh.
Right. So if you can't name 4 other people that you trust yourself with, then maybe we need to expand beyond just yourself. That lone wolf never was successful.
Right.
Right. Maybe for a short amount of time, but not for the long term. Right. So we need to have a tribe of people that help us. So if you can't think of 4 other people, have that. But then secondly, when someone says, hey, like you're going through whatever you're going through, and instead of saying, do you talk to anyone? We want to ask, who do you talk to about this? Because what that does is that normalizes that what they're going through is real, that it has value, it has merit, it displays empathy, that, yeah, you are going through this and you matter. So we do need that who to be a part of that conversation.
And I'm so glad you used the word tribe, because tribe is what we teach in our group. And I promise everybody, I didn't plant that. I didn't ask him to say it. It just fit in there because it's the right thing. Having one person is good. Having 5 people in your tribe or in your little network is probably better. So I'm glad you said that, and it wasn't a prompted word. What I love about this also is, although we're talking about really healthcare professionals and peer group leaders and clergy, these tools really can be used for anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of the principles we're talking about really can apply to just about anybody.
Truth. I'll cut that. Adam Glendye, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I'm so glad that you guys were able to,
Me too.
to connect, and I know how busy you are and that you made a little bit of time to be over here. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. And I'm never too busy. My schedule is just always full.
So should we give out your phone number or website or email? How do you, if somebody wanted to reach out and ask you a question right now, what would you say?
Yeah, of course. You can reach out to us at thepursuitcounseling.com. I'm sure we can throw that in the show notes somewhere.
Yeah.
But on our website, there's a button called Book Now, and you can click on that and you can get scheduled for a free 20-minute video consultation with one of our therapists. And we like doing video because it creates that connection. You can talk to anybody on the phone and it can still feel distant.
Gotcha.
But being able to do a FaceTime 20-minute consultation, we're not using FaceTime. We're using a HIPAA compliant electronic health record. Disclaimer. But having that visual contact with someone where we can truly display the empathy that we mean, it will go a long way. So just get to us at thepursuitcounseling.com.
Awesome.
Sweet. And I'm glad you said that, because, a lot of times when you're talking to somebody on the phone for a long time or in email, you have a visual of what they look like or who they are and all that. And then you see them in person, you're like, man, that was nothing like what I was expecting. So it's good to start off knowing who you are and all that. So, hey, let's do something different.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about our next episode.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about what we're doing next. We're going to try something different. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, maybe it'll be the last time we do it. Because we have so much information on resiliency, we're going to split it up into 2 different episodes.
Okay.
Again, what we love to do or try to do with this show is give people the tools to deal with reality. It's not just talk about gloom and doom. We're going to mention gloom and doom, but we're going to say, okay, here's how you get past it and how you deal with it and how you live with it. So we're going to do a 2-part series on resiliency. And then we're going to talk about something that I think is the foundation, the core, the basis for really a lot of the problems people have: trust, or the lack of trust.
There you go. That's probably the bigger problem.
That's right.
Exactly. So episode 13 and 14, a 2-part series on resiliency. And then 15, we'll come back with trust.
You bet.
Man, we're going to slide right on into the summer.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to be working on having new guests coming in with us and all new topics as we go through the rest of this particular season.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being part of the Eden Project. If you ever want to reach out to Bren, here's his number. 678-632-5383. That's 678-632-5383. You know, if you got questions, I know one thing that somebody, if you live outside of the Georgia area where we are from right now, by the way, broadcasting from Trilith at Rome, you might wonder, well, I'm in Florida or wherever you might be, listening to us from. And it won't matter. You can reach out because
you bet.
We have ways that we want to talk to and reach as many people as possible.
Yep.
So reach out to us, or you can visit eden-project.com. It's eden-project.com. Do you have anything you would like to say to everybody?
I will say thank you, everybody. If you like what we've said, like us, share us, communicate, all that other good stuff, and keep it going.
Everybody have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the After Action Report, a podcast from the Eden Project. Be well.